Okay, sometimes we start a little late in these afternoon classes. Always up to my time here. Okay, we're learning a Sicha from the early years from Yud Beis Tammuz, Tafshin Yud. Although Yud Beis Tammuz was already Shabbat Sunday, but we're going to continue along where we're holding a Tafshin Yud. And the next class on this will be for Tafshin, for Parshas Pinchas, which is really Shabbos and Baruchim Ab. So we have some time. All right. Sichas Yud Beis Tammuz Tafshin Yud. Sicha talking to Rebbe Yud Beis Tammuz, the liberation of the previous Lubavitch Rebbe and his birthday, in the year 1950. So again, a few months after the passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Benisim uber Benisim uber Rechasam Matzinu Kamen Chilukim Dargas. In how you look at miracles, and the blessing for the miracles is different levels. Besidrum and Mailamata, and we'll start from above down. The Mila Mikulam, the highest level of a miracle that applies to the person we can relate to, is Neshna Asalatzme, a miracle that happens to you. If something happens to a person themselves, that's the highest level of a miracle. Matamizat, what's lower than the miracle that happens to you, and the blessing of it, and the zikar and the memory of it, is Neshna Asalatzme, a miracle that happens to your father. Whether the miracle happened before the child was born. Even then, it's less than a miracle that happens to yourself, meaning, what's the Rebbe saying? Because it could be, it's a miracle that would affect if you would be born or not. Let's say his father survived the miracle. Had he not survived it, then technically he wouldn't be here. So it's pretty much directly related to you, not just that the person's that's your father, but also that if your father wouldn't have survived, that you wouldn't be here. So they have, but still not at the level of an S that happens to you. Or if it happens after you're born. But still, because the relationship of a father and a son, it's very close to the person. More than the next levels that we're going to discuss. That it's a miracle that happens to your father is like a miracle that happens to you, but not exactly as it happens to you. I know because it's a part of you that's always connected to the father. So, for instance, right now we're holding Shabbos Balakah. It's my family personally. My father survived a severe car crash when he was engaged to my mother. He miraculously survived it. So that's something that's before we're born, and it's a miracle, and we celebrate at the same time. That's the second level after the miracle that happens to the person themselves. The matim is even lower than a miracle that happens to your father, whether before or after you're born, is a nasa neis shenasa the rabbi, a miracle that happens to your teacher. Because the son is like an extension of the father. So a father brings a person to this world physically and a little bit to the world to come, depending on the influence the father has on the person's spiritual being. But a teacher only has the chaylam above. Means the teacher doesn't give birth to the child physically, but the spiritual education and guidance that the teacher gives is also helps to bring the child to Olam Haba. But still, the father has from two parts, both hopefully the level of education in spirituality and Yiddishkeit that a father gives this child, and also physically brings the child into this world. Not only that, and also, as far as the certainty, you're certain that if you exist here, it's because of your father. And why? Because the Chazaka Torah says that if your mother gave birth, then your father is the father. That's right? Even in 99% of the most cases, is only Bila Sachar. Okay, so therefore, obviously, this is a chazaka that the father is the father. Whereas it comes to spiritual, the world to come, there's also it's not so sure. It's not so sure. Even if the teacher's going to teach you, it could be you're not going to be a good student. You're not going to study right. You're going to have issues in your studying. You're going to have agendas, and then that's going to disrupt your ability or the type of world to come you have. Okay, so footnote, he says over here. This is edited Sicha in Chelik Daled, the first part of it. Okay, the Rebbe also says over here, it discusses the idea in the ideas of of the relationship father and son, as is discussed in Tanya, that even a low father can have a high son, but nevertheless the son takes it from the father. Okay, let's continue in the text in the pnim. The matim is also lower than a teacher. So we have so far yourself, your father, whether before or after you're born, your teacher, and the fourth level is neshnas la'adam mesuyim, a miracle that happens to someone. To someone of interest to you, but not related to you, not your father, not your teacher. So it's even more distant. Could even be that the miracle that happens, although wow, it's a big miracle, it's nothing directly connected to you. It could be someone who's of some sort of public figure or some sort of public important of a person of importance, maybe somewhere or another it's connected to you, but it's less direct and obviously lower than your teacher, your father, and yourself. So the Rebbe says these four levels are all with regard to regular people, even the teacher. We're talking about Yud Beis Tammuz over here, which is a miracle that happened to the Frierdiker Rebbe. But we're talking about a miracle that happens to the leader of the generation, the Nasi. It's not like the person that has a private miracle that happens to them, to someone of importance, or your teacher or your father. It's as if the miracle happens to you. Again, this is the early years where we're talking about Skashra's connection of a Rebbe to a Chassid. The Rebbe Chassid connection is not like two different things that are connected. And the question is, how close is that person or that being to you? Gam like Skashra's the Av Ben, it's even deeper than a father and a son. Ki im guf echad mamish, it's mamish like you're one person. Kol anshe, all the people of the generation are mamish connected, 100%. It's like it's happening to you. A varim pratim, you are particular limbs, hayoinkim who suckle and receive energy, and makabim chayusim, you get your vitality, you're not say Rosh in the head of the generation. So if a miracle happens, like Yud Beis Tammuz, the Frierdiker Rebbe, miracles that happen to tzaddik, it's not a tzaddik in the way of a fine person or your teacher or your father. It's a nasi. It's a nasi. It's a miracle that happens to you. And you'd say Yud Beis Tammuz is something that's personal. So every person who celebrates Yud Beis Tammuz. There's a prati says to be more specific. Just like the head that gives energy and vitality to the limbs of the body. There's never a thought to say that my hand takes a little bit from the head, but it has its own agenda, it has its own possible life source. It doesn't work like that. Every life source of functionality of the hand is getting it directly from the head. And everything that you have comes from the head. So to the nasi, there's no part. This is again. Pay attention to what they're saying here. There is no part of chayis that a chassid has that's not directly receiving from the nasi. No part. Not begashim, not beruchim. It's like the letter we read from Gimel Tammuz Takshin Yud. Who are nasi? Kol hashpos. Shevachol anyanim kulom. Anything. Everything that you need and everything that you have is coming by the nasi. We see this clearly in the generation of the desert. And Moshe says they need meat. First of all, every time they needed something, the most physical things, they're thirsty, they go to Moshe. They're hungry, they go to Moshe. They're disappointed in X, Y, and Z, they go to Moshe. They knew it wasn't even a question. With all the challenges that the Anshe Ador and Midbar, all the challenges that the generation of Midbar had, one thing they didn't have an issue was understanding clearly that if they needed something, they went to Moshe Rabbeinu, Gashmis or Ruchnis. So when they needed it, they said, we need meat. And Moshe says, Ma'ayni Basar, they need meat. So where do I have meat from? According to all the explanations, Ma'ayni Basar, the physical, the spiritual, Moshe expected that they shouldn't be asking for meat, etc. As the Alter Rebbe explains the Torah. But Moshe, where he was standing at that point, it was so great, it was beyond this petty need of I need steak. I feel even for his generation, which was an educated generation, an intellectual generation, called the the day of knowledge, the generation of knowledge. God told Moshe that he has to find 70 of the heads of the Jewish people, but and you can take from the spirit of Moshe, and give it to them. L'chura mahi hechich shegam hashpos habasu shlamatim medragosi shel Moshe tia yod dafka. So why does it have to be that Moshe has to take 70 people? The 70 people have to do it. Tzalti min ruach have to take from the ruach of Moshe. Why? Because even if it's not going to come directly from Moshe, it's going to come through the Shivim Skenim, but it still has to come from Moshe. But Tzalti min ruach and taken from Moshe's ruach. Anything that a person needs, they get from the Nasi Adar. It's just like the hand can't function, doesn't have a second source of life. So to in every generation, not just the Moshe generation. Chinese special so the Moshe extent is there's an extension of Moshe in every generation. That's the Nasi, the Rebbe. Yisayim is ein dor shevay Moshe. There is no generation that we don't have a Moshe. We're frat b'dor the Mashiach, especially in our generation. Meaning, Kidisiv is Tikkun Zohar as it's brought down the Zohar. Sha'oz yeh Moshe ba'atzma. It's not going to be even a spashtus of the Moshe. The Zohar says in the last generation since me, this is Moshe himself. Who? This is he. Everything comes to the Nasi specifically. Hold on, I just want to see the footnote number. What was this footnote coming from? Okay. Go back to the Pnim. Not only this, the Rebbe says. We could say, a miracle that happens to Nasi for his generation is greater even than a miracle that happens to you personally. Right? How sensitive the head is, right? If you have a bad fall, where is it? What's the most protected part of the body is the head, right? Where do they put the helmet? Yes, you can scratch your arm, but if the head has damage, not just the head is higher than the rest of the body. He's the source of all life. And the way it is in the brain before it goes to the body is even more spiritual. Right? Once it filters into the system to the body, it already gets more physical. So for sure, when it comes to a miracle that happens to the head, to the Nasi, it's even on a higher level and more effective because that's your source of life. It's not just that it's coming from the head versus your hand or a foot, etc. But a miracle that happens to Nasi more versus a miracle that happens to you yourself. We find about miracles there's two opinions. Meaning we look at the person who the miracle happens to. Or how low is this person? Means how high is the person who the miracle happens to? How low is the person the miracle happens to? Sometimes you have to cash in chips. If you have a miracle, you have to cash in from your schusim. When a miracle happens to the Nasi, the heart of the Jewish people that's brought down also the moyach and the heart. The Nasi is totally pure of any kind of foreign alloys. That there should be some sort of garua, therefore you have to take away from these chusim. It's only for the positive. So the miracles in itself coming in a positive way, and that's a miracle not just for the Nasi, it's a miracle for you. So, and even greater than a miracle that would happen to you. So therefore, the Rebbe says, what's the bottom line? Now that we're Yud Beis Tammuz, the Rebbe would always bring around the days. So we're still in the days of Yud Beis Tammuz. It was just last night was Yud Tammuz. For us as Chassidim, our generation, this is the holiday of holidays. One thing is the holiday that there was a miracle. Yud Beis Tammuz hu Moed v'nes hakloli. The 12th of Tammuz is the general ness. Nisei shel Rosh Yisrael, a ness that happened, a miracle that happened to the head of the Jewish people. Therefore, any miracle that happens to you as an individual is drawing from the general ness, the ness of the Yud Beis Tammuz. Therefore, the Rebbe says, it's a holiday that affects all the Jewish people. As the Rebbe himself said, when he celebrated the first year, Tafresh Bechetz, 1928, he celebrated the liberation the year after it happened. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes that's only I. Yud Beis Tammuz was redeemed from Hashem on the 12th of Tammuz. Anyone who holds Torah precious to them. Those who keep mitzvahs. As Asher B'Shem Yisrael Yechuna, like we learned in the other talk of Tammuz. Parshas Chukas, even if you just call nickname by a Yid, in the Gay Lechol is minimum premise, so in all times and in all places, like we say about Egypt. If not for Yitzis Mitzrayim, we would still be in Egypt. So if not for Yud Beis Tammuz, we would still be before Yud Beis Tammuz. So therefore, now we sit today, in the week of Yud Beis Tammuz, it's a celebration, not just in the concept that happened against the Nasi. It happened a long time ago, 1927, 100 years ago. It's something that happened, and it happened to us because we're Chassidim of the Nasi, and it personally affected us because that has not happened. Our ability to be here today is because of Yud Beis Tammuz. Let's do another Sicha. The Rebbe says, we spoke before, the Friedrich Rebbe spoke. We spoke about that. Remember that we spoke in the Sicha of Parshas Chukas. We spoke about that. The Friedrich Rebbe said that about Yud Beis Tammuz, he spoke about Chaim Nitzchim, Chaim Amitim, true life, everlasting life. This Chaim Aruchim, long life, Chaim Amitim, true life, we have time at the end, and we use that to say that the Rebbe is still with us. And we should know that that's why the Friedrich Rebbe specifically spoke about that the last Yud Beis Tammuz. Because things of holiness, Haim Ein Sefer Infinite. Why did the Friedrich Rebbe talk about it? The last year he was physically alive, which was 1949. He didn't speak about it in 1948 or 47, means years before. It was the last Yud Beis Tammuz before the 10th of Shvat, which was the day of the passing of Friedrich Rebbe. Because then the Friedrich Rebbe wanted to pre-warn and that we have to remember that this is the everlasting life, and therefore a chassid shouldn't think that today's Yud Beis Tammuz that it's no longer applicable to us because the Rebbe passed away. There's a huge fight in between. No, it's Chaim Nitzchim. The Rebbe is still with us. Again, everything that Rebbe speaks about in the years of Tavshin Yud, Yud Beis, these ideas of Iskashus, and these ideas how we deal with Yud Shvat and how we deal with the concept of yard site and the concept of Istalkus. All these things is how we're supposed to understand how we process this in our relationship with the Rebbe around and post Gimel Tammuz till this day. But Pratis Yos, the Rebbe says to be more detailed. Yetevas Chaim, what does the word mean life? Yeichel Lefarish Pshetla. You could try to give different explanations. What does it mean to be alive? Mazar B'chaim, spiritual life. One of the Torah mitzvahs, that his Torah mitzvahs are alive. Like it says, he came chayenu, this is our life. There's other things spiritually that are called life. There's 10 things called life. He says, no, we're not talking about just life. We're talking about long life. We're talking about long life, we're talking about physical life. We're talking about to be alive a long time. Therefore, we're not talking about the Rebbe's spiritual influence. We're talking about the Rebbe's with us. Whether you want to look at it the spiritual, physical, or that time nitzchim of the tzaddik, like the Alter Rebbe writes, is Chaim Ruchnim, but it's the Rebbe is with the chassid. As long as the Rebbe, a chassid needs the Rebbe, which is right now, everyone needs a Rebbe. Everyone needs our Rebbe to be with us. Then the Rebbe is with us. The Rebbe will never leave his flock. וגם החיים הרוחים ועד חיים בלי הפסק ייתכן שגם הוא מצד הוא מצד המקרא, היינו שבפועל לא יהיה הפסק, אבל היכול יש גם להפך. Means that sometimes even when you say, you may think that it just happens to be like that, but it could have been another way. וכיוון שבניתן דם לדבר אוידס מצב של איני בוסר נראה שנעשה הפסק. יסיירים מזה, על פי שולחן ערוך צריכים לעשות עכשיו כמה עניינים. So therefore we're in a situation now where there seems that there was a hefsek. Gimel Tammuz happened, Yud Shvat happened, we said Kaddish. Chaim Edag, Chaim Amitim, Chaim Bli hefsek. It's not just Chaim Aruchim that the Poil is alive, but the Rebbe's, it's true life. Chaim Amitim and Ischum Shalai Shaykh B'hem hefsek. It wasn't even possible for it to be any other way. But Tamat Over Kefish Mamshech Musayim, like the Rebbe says, why is it like that? Chaim Amitim Him Kedusha B'Kedusha Ein Seif, because the true life is the holiness, and holiness has no end. Hemasi, the Rebbe says the truth is. We understand this from again, the famous letter that the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya. That the life of a tzaddik is not physical, it's not a life of flesh and blood. The tzaddik's life is a life spiritual. Shem Emunah. What is the true life of a tzaddik? Is the tzaddik's belief in Hashem and what he belief he gives his talmidim, his Klal Yisrael of his generation. The year of Ava, love and fear. Sharei v'negei l'chaim ruchnim b'chlal b'prat emunah year of Ava. Maybe kol achad shagam gam seichel gas l'shayich in shamis. Everyone knows. When it comes to belief, Ava and Yira, there's no such thing as death. It's not even in the category that's possible for death. But the this is the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya. Maybe people didn't pay attention, but the Frierdiker Rebbe explains it that Chaim Amiti means the Rebbe is alive with us. Is that movement? The Rebbe says, therefore, it's understood. Shagam Achsha, Shlichus Shlichus Shapoig Dishmorchami Admer Kamai Koidim. A person Chassid should never think that all the Hayros and all the lessons that the Rebbe has given us and gave us over the years is not applicable anymore. Yeshem Keila, those who think there's a difference. When the Rebbe was alive, then I have to do what the Rebbe says. The Rebbe would call him Yichidus. Now, or Lichtoi wasn't writing a letter. I talk him. What's going on? Where are you? What's going on? We expect things from you. I sent you on a mission. Monsieur, a specific mission. I gave you the strength to fulfill it. So a person would think that, so then you may get a letter, the Rebbe may call him in or her in. A person may think, okay, now I can do what I want. So therefore the Rebbe says that everything is everlasting. Whatever was there before is there now. And the strength that you've been given. And therefore the strength is there as it was before. And therefore the Rebbe is demanding as he would always. With the same seriousness and strength. About the shlichus that's been sent and being sent. There are people who say, what are you talking about? They wonder about the Rebbe saying such things. The MSC doesn't change the fact. This is the way it is. We find such a thing in Tanakh. It says, a letter came from Eliyahu Navi after his passing, after he left this world. After he went up to heaven, physically, like Elijah did. What's such a big deal? The Rebbe is still sending. How's the Rebbe going to tell a person? The person says it's supposed to be Tammuz. I don't know if the Rebbe sent me. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe has his ways. He'll let you know. It's not your concern to worry about how the Rebbe is going to tell you. That's for the Rebbe to deal with. The Rebbe is reliable. If he has a mission for you, you'll know about it. So let's actually stop here. When we finish off the Sicha, there's Hashem the next day or two, and we'll learn about this Maimer panel this week, the Maimer of Bismillah of Hashem about Tachin and Emunah and Nucha. I think we'll learn that tomorrow. We'll go back and forth a few days until we have to learn the Shabbos and Baruch Hamad. Have a wonderful rest of your day.